First, thank you for hosting me and allowing me to be here. And also, thank you for letting me speak English. I promise you that your English is better than my German. Shall we begin?
Yeah.
Okay. In 2009, I was on a plane going from San Jose, California to Dallas, Texas. Being on a plane is fairly common for me because this work is my life's passion. I have more than 3 million miles flying. And sitting next to me was Kim Walesh. Kim is the Director of Economic Development for the City of San Jose, California. San Jose is located in the West Coast, and it is America's 10th largest city. It's about 1.1 million people. So it's a fairly sizable city. It's not our biggest, but it's fairly sizable. And of course, she's sitting next to me. She's stuck next to me. And she's talking about the city, and of course, I'm talking about innovation games and the kind of work that we do with innovation games and cities. And then we kind of got talking about more important stuff. And there's a moment that happens in your life when something happens, and it's like it's in slow motion. Sometimes it's like a car accident, or you're riding your bike, and or when you're a parent and you see your 2-year-old just about to fall off the edge, and you're about to grab them. And life slows down, and it's bullet time. And in that moment, Kim said that the city of San Jose was $100 million in debt. Think about that, $100 million. Of course, I immediately thought, OMG, because I'm from California. And I instantly thought about the work that I have done for decades in the Agile community, where we help people through these techniques and through the collaborative techniques that we promote. We help people prioritize features. That's what product managers and product owners do. And we have techniques for this. And we prioritize backlogs, and we prioritize epics, and this word prioritize comes up. And so for me, I hear $100 million in debt, and I think there's a prioritization problem. So I think we can prioritize the city budget. And I instantly say to Kim, we can help. And then I realized what I said, and I thought to myself, what did I just say? I'm a business person. What do I know about city government? And what do I know about these things? And Kim was very gracious. She was very kind. She said, thank you very much. But our mayor, Mayor Reed, already practices community-based budgeting. Well, what's that? Oh, well, we bring lots of people in from the community and we talk about the budget. I'm thinking, this sounds like customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I'm an Agilist, and this makes me super happy. So we go to the session, and I say, can I see this in action? It's 2010 now. The timing is important. I met her in 2009. In 2010, we go to the session, and you can see this is the best photo I have. It's very grainy. There's Kim, and there's me. And they had a presentation to the participants, the residents, the PowerPoint. And then they gave the residents a roll of nickels and 5 jars. And those jars represented the priorities of the citizens, like safety or housing. And this is a survey. And surveys suck. Now, surveys don't totally suck, and in fact, in our product management class, we talk about the proper use of a survey. But when you are talking about a budget, you're talking about a shared economic resource. And when it's a shared economic resource, the opinions of other people matter to you. Do you like broccoli?
Yes.
I hate broccoli.
Why?
Does it matter? Does it matter? No, right? When would it matter?
When you are cooking together.
Right, because it becomes a shared resource, and when it is shared, it matters to us. That's why participatory budgeting is important in SAFE. Because when we have a portfolio, it's a shared resource. It's not my resource, it's our resource. I actually like broccoli. We'd be okay. So I said to Kim, by the way, the smart residents just took the nickels. Because they knew it didn't matter. I put nickels in a jar, who cares? It's a stunt. And so I said to Kim, let's make this a collaborative experience. Let's try again. Now, to make it a collaborative experience, we need a couple of things. We need a goal, something to achieve. We need resources, something by which I can use to achieve the goal. I need a space to collaborate, like this beautiful space here, this beautiful room. It's designed for collaboration. It's got flip charts, and it's got walls, and it's got things that move. This is a space that invites us to collaborate. We need rules on how to collaborate. Different forms of collaboration need different rules and different guidance, and we need to know how to do it. And because we want to know how we're doing, we need a way to keep score, a way to track. And the most important part of collaboration in business or in our personal life is we choose to do this. On this side of the line, I'm an entirely rational person, and I can pick up the ball with my hands. I step over here and I make a choice to not touch the ball with my hands, but to kick it, unless I'm the goalkeeper. Over here, I'm a completely rational person, and if I want to put a ball in a cup, I just put it in a cup. I walk over to the grass over here, and I become completely irrational, and I whack it with a stick to try and send it in the air to put it in a cup. What any rational person, if they want to put it in the cup, could just put it in the cup. We choose this. And in many ways, for me, part of the Agile community is creating choice about what we want to do in a way that is compelling and powerful. We don't want to force people to write a user story. We want to write a user story because we want to create great products and services. So, what I've described, of course, is a game. And we have lots of games as humans. In fact, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Germany is, in fact, the world's largest market for board games. Did you know that? If you look at the amount of money spent globally on board games, Germany is the world's largest market. Germans love to play. Who knew? And a serious game is merely a game that is played for something other than pure entertainment. Now, we have lots of games, and games become the ideal collaboration tool. If you take all of those qualities that I just described for a game, and you look at a group of people working, a game gives them an ability to collaborate more effectively because it has all of the elements that humans need to collaborate well. We have a goal. We know how to work together. We have a space to play. We have a mechanism to keep track. All of the elements to play the game. I have a burn-up chart to keep track. I have a daily stand-up, which is how we interact. I have all the rules of how to make sense of what I want to do. And there's lots of games. There's Product Box, which helps you understand unmet customer needs. There's Remember the Future, which is a form of goal-driven planning. There's Spiderweb, which helps us understand relationships. There's Start Your Day, which is one of my favorites, which helps me understand patterns of use over time. There's Speedboat, which many of you know as a retrospective technique, but was originally designed to be played with customers to understand what are their impediments. Not the impediments of the team, but the impediments of your customers in using your product and service. Now, we have lots of games, but none of these games were appropriate for the City of San Jose. It was an economic problem. But we have a game for that. We have Buy a Feature, or participatory budgeting, where we assemble a group of stakeholders, we describe some items, and we give them a limited budget, and they work together. Now, this wasn't going to work directly for San Jose because San Jose was facing a budget deficit. So I can't walk up to the citizens and say, how would you spend money that they don't have? What we need to do is we need to adapt games to our situation. We need to learn how to mod, and in gamer terminology, when you modify a game, it's a game mod. Do I have any gamers in the room? Okay, so you know what mods are, right? I'm modding the game. So we mod the game. And what happens is we're $100 million in debt. So I needed to help the city. And the way I modded the game was we created green sheets. Green sheets represent desirable things that the residents could fund. Red sheets represented reduction proposals, which are ways that you could cut the budget in the city to get money to fund things. And as I'm a game designer, right, games are designed to achieve a goal. I made a very hard rule. The group of residents had to unanimously agree on a cut to get the money. So if we had 5 people at a table and only 4 agreed, it wasn't done. You had to have unanimous agreement. Now, I know I've got a lot of product owners and product managers in the room. And I'm a product manager for our platform at Scaled Agile. And I know we agonize over our backlogs, right? It's our backlog, and it's so, right? He's nodding and smiling. Like, our backlogs are so important, right? We're driving into work. We're on the train. We're thinking about we're driving home, and it's so important. But I want to point out that our backlogs aren't as important as things like, would you like to fund children's health or park rangers, which keep the park safe, or anti-graffiti, which is shown to reduce gangs? And how do I get the money? Well, would you like to eliminate the police helicopter? Would you like to take the people in the fire truck from 5 people to 4? It saves a lot of money. Is it safe? This is prioritization in the real world. This is hard stuff. And one of the reasons I like to do my philanthropic work is I feel it keeps me balanced. I go to work and I'm all wrapped up about my backlog, and I look at this work and I realize, okay, maybe my stuff isn't as important.
Is this just a binary discussion, or is there some gray area shifting, reducing a little bit and adding?
No, these numbers, I'm glad you asked that. And please, because it's an intimate group, you can interrupt me and ask me questions at any time. When you're working in participatory budgeting, you have 2 mechanisms to get the cost of the items. One mechanism is we use estimates, like a forecast in Agile. We take points and then we convert them to dollars or euros and then move forward. But when you're working in this arena, the estimates have to be given by the city because they represent the city's perspective on what is actually the budget. So these numbers are given to us by the city, and they're not scalar, because usually when you're working in city governments, even in Europe, because I've been doing this in Europe, I've part of the reason I fly so much is I help other cities. So I've helped, for example, Lublin, Poland implement participatory budgeting, and some places in Edinburgh and a few other places. But when you're working with the residents in a city, in the city government, you want those numbers to be coming from the city budget office, and usually they're not scalar. They're usually whole programs that you either implement or don't implement.
Come on, half a helicopter.
Yeah, right. How do I get half a helicopter? It doesn't make sense. And if I'm going to open a community center, I can't. Either I delay it or I don't, and those numbers are not scalar. But to be fair, a lot of the work that you do in your job isn't scalar. Either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it.
Well, the scope is somewhat.
The scope is somewhat negotiable, but less so in business, less so in the civic sector. So far, it's good. Okay, so what we did was we assembled a group of facilitators. Many of these were my Agile friends in San Jose, and we did all of this work for free. So none of this work cost the city anything. It's all completely pro bono. Does that translate German? Yeah, pro bono. So I tell my kids, those who marry for money earn it. Meaning not everything you do in life should be paid for, if you will. And so Brett McCallan was one of the facilitators. And you can see we've got the green sheets, we've got the red sheets, we've got the San Jose money, we've got citizens. Now, the participants, who do we draw into this kind of a session? The way American cities are organized is we usually take a city and we break it up into geographic districts. And within the districts, we further decompose it into neighborhoods or communities. And the communities usually have a little bit of like an association or like a pseudo company, but it's an association. And they have like a president and a secretary, and they help that community be successful within that district. So we started with the neighborhood association leaders and the youth commission. So there's a group in the city that's promoting youth voices, and we invited them to attend. And finally, what we also did was we looked at every person attending and where they lived in the city, and then we made sure that each table had representatives drawn from the different parts of the city so that you weren't concentrating people in one geographic area at a table. The other thing that we had were subject matter experts. So many times Agile people are experts in process, but not experts in content. And I don't know how this, I don't even live in San Jose. So I can't answer certain questions. So what we had was we had people like Fire Chief William McDonald. And so when the residents had a question, is this okay to reduce the fire truck? We had a complex signaling mechanism. We had a paper plate taped to a stick and we would raise it. And then we would find out who would come over, and you could ask the fire chief, is this safe to reduce the fire truck? What they chose was pavement maintenance over libraries. And I remember it when the word radical, Mayor Reed called me up after I gave him the first results, and he said, Luke, are these results truly the results of the session? I'm like, absolutely, Mayor Reed. I built them myself. And he said, we need pavement maintenance in San Jose. But if I go publicly to say in the paper, we need pavement maintenance, the friends of the library will come out in force against me. And then he says, there's no friends of pavement. But pavement is infrastructure and cities need infrastructure. And then he said, oh, you're a software person. You may not understand that. And I'm like, actually, I do. Because who are friends of infrastructure and software? If you are not the friend of infrastructure, who is the friend of infrastructure? We have a term for that in SAFE, right? It's called architectural runway. If you are not recognizing architectural runway, who is?
The architect.
If you're not the friend of the architect, right? Who's your best friend as a product manager? Your architect. So we had impact. They did reduce the fire department. They did reduce the police department. They did delay. They did fund a couple of proposals. And of course, what we learned in the process for me was the techniques that we were applying in business could in fact be applied in the public sector. That's very exciting. The things that we do as Agilists can be used to accomplish bigger goals. Now, of course, we did a retrospective in the event. And it was very emotional because a woman from a clearly economically disadvantaged part of the city has the microphone, and she said, last year I came to this event, and I didn't feel like I was being heard, and I wasn't going to come to this event. But my husband convinced me to go, because I am the association leader for my neighborhood. And she started to tear up, and she said, this was the first time I had the same amount of money as everyone else at the table. I had the same voice, and I had the same influence as everyone else. That's amazing when you think about it. Because in most democracies, we have a structure of a vote per person. And yet, we all know that in democracies, it's about money many times. And for this person, she finally felt that she had an equal voice because at that table, she had the equal amount of money. That's amazing. So we, of course, kept going, and they said, this is great, let's do it again, it's interactive. Can we add a sales tax to increase revenue? Can we add new ideas instead of just looking at this? And of course we did. So in 2012, we did it again. We added new taxes. We added other complex things. You could either buy this one or none of them. We added funding proposals for the table. They could add an idea, but they also had to fund it. And would it be okay to watch a little video about this event? I hope this works. Okay, a little quiet.
This is a kickoff of a 6-month-long process of developing a budget for the City of San Jose.
Oh.
And we've been doing this since I became mayor as part of our community-based budgeting process.
We've got many of our key staff here who are also very interested in hearing the questions, the discussion, and taking that as inputs as the city manager puts together her proposed budget.
The goal of this session is to understand your priorities, as Mayor Reed described. To spend on the proposals that are in the green paper. The facilitators at the table will help you manage the process. They will handle the distribution of the money to you. But if you buy an item, if you want to fund a proposal, you must, as a table, give the money back to the facilitator. So it's like you're spending real money.
It was really a great opportunity, and the fact that I was there originally wanting to advocate for libraries and community centers, and I was ready to fight till the end to make sure that also the gang prevention task force was saved through funding. I found that I didn't even have to because the people on my table were passionate about that already. So they were advocates with me as well, so I did not have to fight tooth and nail for the things that I wanted to originally.
Sometimes you have to bend a little bit to get things done or get things funded. And sometimes if there's strong personalities, it's not that easy to get there. But other than that, it was a good exercise in getting a chance to touch base and interface with people from a diverse backgrounds across the city. And I really encourage other opportunities like that for us as community organizers to participate in.
First time, my experience of it was very positive. I was engaged in the conversation around the table, watching the participants to the degree that they were willing to put forward their ideas, articulate their rationale for them, but in the final analysis was what they were willing to negotiate and interact with one another and come to a consensus position. And I was surprised how quickly that happened with respect to the priorities, because I was expecting some people to be binary in terms of something that I consider trivial. But for the most part, I was surprised the level of agreement that came across that.
Okay, that's kind of enough for the...
Participants in this exercise have a lot of good input, and
So you can get a sense of this, right?
How was a unanimous vote in between the tables managed? I mean, you have 9 or 8 out of 11 tables found a unanimous budget, but it wasn't a unanimous between, like they didn't have the same idea.
And that's actually a virtue of the process. So he's asking about the structure, and this is either for cities or for companies. If you're, let's say that you're in your company and you're doing portfolio management, it's impossible for a group this size to collaborate. Humans do not collaborate in large groups. We're not biologically designed. And so imagine if we were to try and vote on something, most of this room would be quiet. But if I organize this room into small groups, each group can have an opportunity to talk. If independent groups with no crosstalk say something is important, it's actually a more accurate representative of the actual intention of the group. Because if each group individually says this is important, I don't need to have the groups talk to each other because they've already talked within the group. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, so I've done this at large companies. One BMW in Munich, we've done participatory budgeting, and PayU in Poland. So when you have a group of leaders organized into groups and they independently say something is important and you show them the results, it's very easy for the leaders to get behind it and say, if we all independently said it was important, then it's important and let's move on. So I've seen portfolio management processes that in traditional approaches can take weeks, literally compressed down into a half of a day, because the data is so compelling about the results. Did you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was split votes. In your case, you had 8 out of 10 going for one thing. What is it if it's 50-50 to fundamentally opposing topics? How do you decide what's more important? If it's
In my experience, it's extremely rare. It sounds like it's going to happen, but it doesn't. But in the few cases over the couple of decades that I've been doing this, when we have split votes, usually what it represents is a lack of appropriate data for the group to make a decision. So we identify where the split votes are. We talk to the group about the unanswered questions that they have about the content, and then we run the exercise again with an updated set of content. And usually the acquisition of more data allows the group to reach a consensus, and then you see the prioritizations emerge. But usually it's a signal that the group just doesn't have enough information to make the decision. It didn't happen here because what isn't shown here is it actually took me working with the city 3 months to prepare the data. You don't just walk in and you get this data. It takes a little bit of time. We did calibration games. We tested. We felt the data was going to give the information that's needed. And if anyone wants to see the examples of this, I'm happy to make these data public. Absolutely.
How do you make sure the data that you put in is not biased?
It is always biased. Data is always biased, and we talked about this in the master class. When you're doing any form of research, you have incredible amounts of bias. You have method bias by the method you're choosing. You have participant bias by the people you invite. You have content bias by the bias that you put into the content. You have facilitator bias of the way that people facilitate. You've got subject matter expert bias by the way they answer questions. You've got incredible amounts of biases. There's two responses to that. Are the collection of biases we have better than not getting input at all? Are you with me? And how do I control and create the right kind of bias? So let's look at method bias. Method bias is I'm biasing this method to be convergent, but that's the problem that we're trying to solve. So most of the time, method bias is what you want. You're choosing a method because it's biased. It's biased to get you the technique that you want. Participant bias, trust me, my dream is to have every citizen engaged. The city wasn't ready to do that on the very first try. So they were willing to do a couple hundred people, not 1 million. In my world, I'd have 1 million. We have facilitator bias. Now, facilitators in our events are in fact trained. And they're trained as best we can to deal with the emotions. And in the structure of the event, there's actually a few psychologists, which I call my Uber facilitators, and they roam around the room, and when a group is in trouble, they actually are trained to get them out of trouble in terms of negotiation. So we have trained facilitators in negotiation and things like that. So I could go through the rest of them. I'm going to go back to the thing. But you, of course, have bias. But your job, just like as a product manager when you're doing market research, your job is to understand the biases and decide how to manage them to create the best possible outcome. But you're never going to remove bias. In fact, it's the other way around. You want to understand bias so that you can manage bias. I felt so compelled about this result with my friend Martha Amram. She's an economist, that we created a nonprofit foundation, Every Voice Engaged Foundation, and our mission is to bring these techniques to cities around the world. The name came from Lisa Atkins. Do people in this room know who Lisa Atkins is from the coaching community? So Lisa's a friend of mine. She took one of my master classes and we were talking about this. And I said in the master class, I'm struggling because I want to do this nonprofit, but I don't know what to call it. And she raised her hand and she said, you should call it Every Voice Engaged Foundation, because you want every voice engaged. And I said, Lisa, I love you, thank you. And so I always give her credit. So in 2013, we kept going. We made it even bigger. This is a bigger part of the city, so we got more people involved. And that's when we started to go globally. Jurgen de Smet runs a consulting firm, Co-Learning, in Belgium. And he started to bring participatory budgeting into Europe. And he pointed out that there is one key difference between Americans and Europeans, especially in Belgium, and that is the refreshments are different. And Jurgen points out that American politics would probably be better if we adopted your refreshments. And I actually think he's right. Then, in 2014, the city said, can we scale this even further? Can we go online? I said, yes, we can. We have a platform called Weave, specifically designed for this. And now we were able to bring more residents from San Jose in, and the facilitators were global. We had facilitators from Sweden facilitating these sessions in San Jose, California, drawing people globally, creating a global community of facilitators. Now, what did the San Jose residents think about the online games? This is an important topic in the Agile community, right? This notion of co-location. So this is an unedited chat log from the chat log. Interesting exercise. I've done it in person at City Hall once before, worked very similarly. Gene, this is better than the in-person game. That's interesting. What did you like about it more, Gene? Not noisy, could hear everyone, real-time updates of the balances. I could keep track of other values via their bids. No side chatter, right, because this room is big, and better focus on task. We see that when we have online tools. We sometimes do get better engagement when we're actually doing something that matters to us. But here's the most important point. It came down to the facts. No body language, no prejudices, just ideas and dealing. When I remove our ability to look at each other, I've removed an entire set of prejudices that we have that come into play.
You prejudice me?
You prejudice me? Here's my favorite story. I'm at Cisco, and we're getting ready to do a lean portfolio exercise. And I said, okay, I think we should do this one online so we can get the whole group in, and it will help reduce some of the prejudices and body language. And the leader of this group, I'm just going to call him Ken. It's not his real name, but I'm going to call him Ken. And he's like, Luke, he goes, we don't have any influences like that. And someone in the room starts to giggle, like, and he's like, what? I said, Ken, could you stand up? Now, I want you to picture a 6'7" monstrosity of a human who's bald, who is the size of two of me with tattoos, and the nicest guy you'll ever meet in the world. Stands up. He's like, we don't have any prejudices. I said, Ken, do you think you could possibly influence the outcome of a negotiation? Oh, no. I would never influence the outcome of a negotiation, because he's got this booming voice. And then he looks around the room, and his entire team is like, and so Ken goes, am I influencing it? And he felt mortified, because it was the first time he realized that his self-image of a really nice leader, and he's really, trust me, he is the nicest guy you'll ever meet, but his physical structure is enormous. And you walk in the room and you're just like, what do you want me to do, Ken? Right? So when I know the Agile community loves in-person, I get it. But it's not always the only way. And so you get pointy-haired bosses, right? All teams should be co-located. And then the pointy-haired boss says, but we need distributed teams to scale. In the same sentence. The reality is we have to play the yes and game of Scrum, even if it conflicts with someone's opinion or dogma, because the reality of the modern world is we have distributed teams in multiple locations, and we need both in-person and online tools. SAFE will tell you that PI planning is the most important event in SAFE. And the most effective outcome of PI planning occurs when you're in person. That's the ideal, but in reality, not every PI planning for every company can be done every time in person. So what are our tools? How are we engaging people? So what we learned over the years is that you can repeatedly use Agile collaboration tools to accomplish bigger goals. Now, by this time, we've been cutting the San Jose budget. We've been cutting, and we've been cutting, and we've been cutting, and the city is starting to be successful. We're reducing the debt from $100 million. By the time we were done a few years later, the city actually now has a surplus. But the city, the residents came to me and said, how can we help our city grow? We're tired of cutting, we want to grow. Now, that's a pretty common question for a product manager, right? How does our solution grow? And the question becomes, can we take that approach and help cities grow? Take the techniques that we're used to using as product managers or Agilists and help the city grow. Well, you can shape plants any way you want. So we have a game, Prune the Product Tree, where we represent the growth of a product or service as a tree, and we talk about time horizons, and we look at the tasty features and the nutritious infrastructure, and we engage our internal and external stakeholders in helping us define how we grow our products or services. And in person, it looks like this. These are examples of Prune the Product Tree. This is from a major product at Oracle. This is their roadmap represented as a tree of growth. Because a solution roadmap is intended to help you grow. It just doesn't look like it's intended to help you grow. Are you with me? Right? Solution, any roadmap. Roadmap was what? The number one item there? And we, in our master class, we spent over 3 hours on road mapping. because it's such an important topic. So we even do this internally at SAFE. This is an online version of Pruning the Product Tree. How could the SAFE Learner subscription evolve? And we've even done it with the community. Now, notice I'm using apricots, and that's because San Jose originally was farmland, and it was known for apricots, apricot orchards. So we represented the San Jose. Different when I do things internationally, like when I do Prune the Product Tree in India, we'll use mangoes. So we'll structure it to be culturally relevant. And notice we did in person and online to help the city grow. And this feeds that budgeting process, these ideas. In 2017, we did it again. And we start to really engage these residents. And what we found, we could take the product road mapping tools that we're using in the Agile community, and we can bring it into helping the city grow. Now, what was really exciting is that as we work together, we build trust. By now, it's 2013, 2014. And I went to the city with an even more radical idea. I'm just the guy who always kind of pushes it a little bit. And I said, we've been doing this with the residents in an advisory capacity. They've been giving advice. What if we gave the city, what if we gave the money directly to the residents? Instead of advising, we let them be completely in control of the money. Are you with me? And so we started with $100,000, and we started with District 3. And we went to District 3 and we said, the money is yours. You decide what to do with the money. Sounds like, if you know SAFE, decentralization of decision making and decentralization of control, live in the Agile value. And this deals with design thinking, because the city residents had to create the ideas, they had to shape them into proposals, and they had to prioritize them to pick the best proposals. This also aligns with, if you look at the United Nations gives us guidance on what we're looking for in our children in the future. And we want to teach what are called the 4 C's of creativity. If we have AI helping us do our jobs in the future, then what are we teaching our children? Well, we want to teach them collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication. Creativity, create ideas. Critical thinking, shape those ideas. Prioritization, communication, and collaboration. How do I communicate those ideas? How do we work together to pick them? So, one day at dinner, I said to my family, I got an idea. And my wife said, oh, kids, Dad's got an idea. And I said, you know that work we've been doing at the city? How about we give the school money and put the kids in control? My wife's just like doing what, that's just what she did. I mean, instantly, my wife's like, literally, that's what she did. She's like, I'm like, come on, hon. I'm like, let's trust the kids. So I said to one of my kids, Cress, I said, Cress, give me one idea to make the school a better place. I'm not going to hit my time, but I'll go fast. And he says, we need a lunch line to make it go faster for drinks. I said, great. So operational engineering and made the school better. So we gave the kids at Sunnyvale Middle School $500. Now, what we told the kids is anyone can make a school better with $1 million. It takes creativity to make a school better for $500. So the kids went online. This is a map of their school. The Spartan is their logo. These are their ideas. It's a big school. It's 1,200 kids. And they started adding all these things. Now, a pond isn't really a great idea, but what about a water bottle refilling station? Take the fountain and make it more eco-friendly. And that's, in fact, what the kids chose. The kids chose this. The kids had this idea. And every adult associated with the project said, we never would have thought of this. And of course they wouldn't. They don't go to the school. We want to get the decentralization into the people who are doing the work, because they're the ones who are capable of making the best decisions most of the time. We did it again. They bought a 3D printer for the school because they know their mom and dad are talking about additive manufacturing and 3D printing, and they wanted to learn it. Now, what happens when you land on free parking in the game of Monopoly?
So you don't have to pay.
You don't have to pay, nothing?
You get all the money in the middle.
You get all the money in the middle. But is that the rule of Monopoly?
For most.
No. The rule of Monopoly is nothing. But most people add money, right? And in Scrum, we call that a Scrum butt, right? Because you're doing Scrum, but you've changed it. So are you a Monopoly butt? You are a Monopoly butt. That's great. Now, Amy Cuddy talks about power posing, and this is especially important research because it talks about how we feel when we're facing a complex task. And she says if you face a complex task and you assume the superhero pose, you will do better. And it's validated in research, a lot of research. So what I want you to do is I want everyone to stand up. I want you to assume the superhero pose. And I want you to introduce yourself by saying the following. Hello, my name is, whatever your name is, and I am a game designer. Say it to a friend. I gotta get the pose. So, all of you, have a seat. Humans play. All high-order species play. It is incorrect to say that cats play to teach hunting, because that's not true. Cats play, dogs play, polar bears play, birds play for the same reason you play. It's pleasurable. All higher-order creatures play. We've elevated play because of our brains, and we have games. All of you are game designers because every one of you have done one change to one game once in your life. I guarantee it. And the moment you did that, you were a game designer. Football has changed. Equipment has changed. Last year, we had a few changes in the rules of football. Coaches can now receive cards. Accidental handball goals will not stand anymore. That was a big rule change. And this one was another big rule change. And according to new FIFA rules, there's no attacking players in the wall. Big changes in football, right? The game evolves. SAFe evolves. It's one of the nicest things about SAFe. As a method, SAFe evolves. If a method is static and it's not evolving, how does it represent and how does it reflect our emerging growth of knowledge in the Agile community? We modify games. We modify games to make them better. And that's critical because we want to see how far we can push the mods. How many business frameworks can we apply to social problems? Well, what school programs we fund, well, that's participatory budgeting, so we can take it into the school programs. But now we have other questions that we've tried to tackle. How do we deal with school overcrowding? Are you with me? Now notice that when I ask you, what school programs should we fund? Your brain is starting to think, well, how much money do I have and how do I want to allocate the funds? It's very technical. But when I say, how do you deal with school overcrowding, the first thing that you think of is, well, what are my options? Could I build a new school? Could I change the district lines? Here, it's a technical problem. Here, it's not a technical problem. So technical problems are things like budgets and roadmaps. They're clearly defined. They have shorter and often repeating time horizons. I have an annual budget. Every 6 months, I look at my budget. Failure isn't catastrophic because I get a repeat. And finally, they're very economic and knowledge-driven. But wicked problems like school overcrowding and urban planning have long time horizons. There's inertia. We've been doing things a certain way. Why should we change? Failure can be catastrophic. If you're running out of room for the kids are coming. You have to deal with the problem. But inertia makes you don't. And there's multiple actors involved, and these actors, because they're human, aren't thinking economically, they're thinking irrationally. They're about values and motivation and beliefs. And these wicked problems occur at all levels of society. They occur in planning. California, we have a drought. In America, we have immigration reform and healthcare reform. Globally, we have wicked problems like, what do we do if 40% of the jobs go away because of AI? How will we deal with the opiate crisis? And sadly, as a father, the thing that America exports is obesity. Do we want our kids to have a shorter lifespan than we have and less health than we have had? I don't think so. These are all wicked problems. Now, the question becomes, do we have wicked problems in business? And if we have wicked problems in business, could we use the techniques that we've been solving wicked problems in business in the social sector, like we did for prioritization? Well, we have late software. We have massive tech debt. We have build or buy decisions. We have punt, pivot, or persevere when it's not super clear. So, how are we doing? We can help, right? Actually, no. The research shows that when we move from technical problems in business to wicked problems in business, our failure rate skyrockets. 50% of strategic decisions in business fail. 50% of mergers, 50% of acquisitions, 50% of new initiatives, and it doesn't matter if it's a tech initiative or building a new theme park or whatever, building a new mobile home, whatever. 50% of initiatives fail. And the reason they fail is because we don't create options. We create things as binary decisions, yes and no. We don't look at the actions and drawbacks associated with that, and we don't collaborate in business. We have hippos. Do you know what hippos are? The room knows what a hippo is? The highest paid person's opinion. Do this. 50% failure rate. So, maybe there's social problems that we can bring into business. A few years ago, I was at South by Southwest. Wow, we're going way ahead. And I met a organization. I don't know what I did. Sometimes the clickers aren't always our friends. I met Amy Lee, who's a program officer at a foundation called the Kettering Foundation. They study the function of democracy itself and how to make democracy better. Just the function of democracy. And what they found is that in a democracy, when you're facing a wicked problem, you need to convene a forum that is a specially constructed forum where you are looking at strategies and looking at the actions and drawbacks of each. And I got to explain this. So let's look at the California drought, something that's important to me because I live there. One option is we could create or capture water. We could drill, we could do whatever, or I could increase conservation. And notice that these two are in opposition. But to really create the best thinking, you always have to have at least one option that is different than the other two. It's not about being right or wrong, it's different. And so the different option in California is to change the laws to create, right now in California, there's no consistent structure of how water is managed. Every part of the state can manage water any way they want, which is not what you need when you're talking about large-scale urban planning. We need coordination. So let's look at the actions for creating more water. I could build a desalination plant. I could change the way water routes through the levees. I could build a reservoir. And because right now we're all action-oriented people, we're product managers, we're product owners, right? We are GSD people. But each of those actions, which sounds great, comes with an intrinsic drawback. And if we haven't assessed the drawback, we can't take the action in a confident way. So what we do now is we look at the drawbacks. What's the drawbacks of a desalination plant? Mostly it's wastewater. What's the drawback we could hurt agriculture, which is a huge part of the state. The levees, the reservoirs, they cost a lot and they don't really save that much water. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything, but if you lived in California, I would say, which action do you support and which drawbacks do you accept? Because you can't support an action without understanding the intrinsic drawback. Are you with me? So what we've done in my company is we created a scalable platform collaboration about this process. It's the world's first scalable platform for deliberative decision making, where each respondent individually talks about what they can support. They indicate, can you live with the drawback? Are you conflicted or you can't live with this? You do this individually to create a baseline. Then what our platform does is it brings everyone together and it creates a visualization of the group's opinion. Over here, there's a chat log. And while you're chatting, if someone changes your mind, you can change your vote. This picture will dynamically update to reflect the emerging opinion of the group. So you know your vote, no one else knows your vote, but the group knows where the group has consensus. So we preserve anonymity in voting, and we create a real-time visualization that's dynamically reflecting the group consensus. You with me? When you're done, you create pictures that look like this, where we have a foundation for action. This has been a great learning experience for me, because as a business person, I just expect everything to be in one spot and away we go. But in the social sector, where these are value-driven things, this is actually a picture that represents reality of a group. There's a couple of things out of here that are important, and now our job is to craft a social policy that draws this together and brings this together. So this is a very sophisticated system. So let's look at, if I were to approach technical debt, one way to do this is rewrite the code, right? I have a friend of mine who used to work for me. His name is Ron Lundy, and he created Lundy's Law. Lundy's Law says the following: given sufficient time, any group of developers will justify a total rewrite. Consultants do it faster. So one option is to rewrite the code, right? But the business people say, dude, if you're going to rewrite the code, I don't want to deal with developers anymore. I'll just go buy it from someone else. Right? You've been there. She's like, yeah, I've been doing that. But in both cases, I think that's the wrong option. I actually think you don't have crappy code. I think you have crappy collaboration. Because every roadmap needs to include a balance of capacity that includes the maintenance and health of the system itself and architectural runway. That's why, for those of you who understand and use SAFe, that's why we have capacity allocation in SAFe. Because it's not rewrite or starve, it's maintain. I tell my team, most people think of architecture and software as this kind of static thing like a building. I build it, I paint it, and I come back in 10 years. I don't have that metaphor. I actually think of our system like a garden. I plant it. It's intended to grow a certain way, and then I weed, and I keep weeding it because things need to be tended. So what have we learned? Well, I'm almost done. We've learned that there's a lot of wicked problems in both business and society, and what we really have are a set of tools, some from the business arena that can help with social problems, some from the social arena that can help with business problems. And that's the goal. The goal is to find the best set of tools that we can to engage the best problems. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the other kinds of opportunities we can create. This is the Agile Manifesto, right? We need to do retrospectives. The problem, and many of you know Speedboat as a retrospective technique, yeah? Some? Okay, you represent your process as a boat. The anchors are what are holding your team back, and the propellers or the wind puffs are what are helping them go forward. Very engaging, lots of photos. The problem is that for those of you who are dealing in scale, you kind of get this, when you're first adopting Agile, you get all this great work from retros. Then the teams mature. Then you start to get into organizational limits, right? So if I have 10 teams working for me and I'm adopting Agile, each team does retros and we get better really rapidly. And what's really happening is the team is learning to work as a team. Then they start to hit harder changes, but the team matures. But eventually, if I've got 10 teams, I hit a limit because one team can't make something imposed on 9 other teams. That's the organizational limit. And what happens in most organizations at scale is that these things start to fail. And what we want is we want to do enterprise retros. So if you're going to scale, you have to scale everything. So what we do is we do every team doing a retrospective online. Then we analyze the data across all the teams. This is from BWin Party. Some of you may be aware, like poker and bingo and things like that. And so what we found were the teams are cooking, but the enterprise problems. So we've got all of these structures. So what about the most important team of all? I'm almost done. There was a book written by family therapists that took my work of innovation games and applied it to families. So if you know the game 2020 vision, these are the priorities for recovery. If you know the game Remember the Future, this is for a group recovering from a gambling debt. So now what? Last 4 slides. You're wondering what is Luke asking me to do? Is Luke asking me to be a collaboration hero? Rune says yes. But I look at that picture and I get worried, right? First, I'm not green. Second, I'm not genetically modified, nor am I enhanced. I'm not a god. And I'm not, Elon Musk. So what do I do? But if you look at that picture carefully, you find that there's 2 people. We have a ballerina who's been trained, and we have a person who doesn't have fear. And what if we didn't have fear about this? What if we wanted to try it? These people, the facilitators, just like you, they were just willing to try and lend a hand. So my request to you, my request to everyone around the world, is I'm going to ask you to play 2 games to change the world. That's it. Just 2. Just 2 games. Now, after this talk, you might think, oh, this is really awesome, and you go back to work and you say, let's play. Except some of you are going to be working in an organization where saying let's play may not be as well received. So I'm going to remember what a game was. I'm going to teach you how to say let's play a game in boss speak. Are you ready? How to speak boss? Okay. You're going to say, boss, I want to engage my team in a goal-directed activity with clearly defined rules of engagement. Progress towards achievement of the goal will be tracked through clearly communicated status indicators. And your boss is going to think this is good, but you're going to see them waver. She wavers for a minute. She's thinking this is good. She's the CEO, but she's not so sure. So should we zorch it up a little? Should we make it a little better? So what we're going to do to make it better is add the word strategic, because every boss, when they see the word strategic, is really excited about this. And to make sure that it's not fun, because we don't want to have fun at work, we're going to call it an exercise. And then to make it that little bit of agile that we know we need, we're going to call it an information radiator. Ooh. Or if you're doing SAFe, you could do the same thing by saying, hey boss, let's implement SAFe lean portfolio management, which includes participatory budgeting as a process. Just like Travelport did, and this is an example of Travelport's adoption of lean portfolio management. So if we did this, every Silicon Valley person has what we call the stupid curve. And the stupid curve is a vanity metric of growth, but it looks so good. Seriously, if you do this, if everyone in this room and everyone in every conference I've ever given plays 2 games to change the world with 5 participants game and a 10% player conversion rate, my 25-year plan to make the world a better place will have happened. And we will have 250 million people around the planet engaged in their governance in both business and society. So what might really happen? We might create a world congruent with Agile values. If all we're doing in Agile is building better software, if all we're doing in Agile is building better product, I'm gonna go find a new home. If what we're here about in Agile is to actually take the values that we say we care about and we start to apply them everywhere, I'm in. That's the place I want to be. That's the Agile I want to do. That's the Agile I care about. That's the reason I do what I do. I suspect you might feel the same way. That's the Agile we want to have. And I'm asking you to do this for one reason. The world needs you. Thank you.